Hello, I am Vito, and I've been looking forward to once again talking about my home country, Norway. I hope just me talking about this today can help some of you guys, maybe even all of you, relax, feel better and good. Even though I will just be talking today, it will just be that kind of ASMR. I've done videos about Norway previously, but I want to do another one. I'm just going to talk about mostly the same things I talked about in previous videos, and I'm just going to go into various aspects of Norway as a country and its culture and stuff like that, you know. Just maybe 7 facts about Norway type of thing. So Norway is, as some of you guys may know, a country in the far north. It lies in Scandinavia. It's also in Europe, and it lies in Scandinavia, and in the far north it is south of Finland but north of Denmark, and it shares a border with Sweden. So Norway is a small country, and is known, particularly in western Norway, for our fjords and for the beautiful nature landscape. Often this beautiful natural Norwegian landscape is associated with western and northern Norway, but other parts of Norway can be super beautiful too. We are a country consisting of valleys, lots of valleys. So yeah, when you drive through Norway, you will see it's essentially a drive through valley after valley after valley. Yeah, so that's Norway for you. But we're going to talk a lot about Norway today. I am born and raised in Norway, and I'm super happy for that. I believe every country is beautiful in its own right, but today I'm going to focus on my home country. So yeah, so Norway exists, as said, in the far north, and it can be at times a very cold country. We have been a wealthy country. That doesn't mean that everyone who lives in the country is wealthy. That is not the case. There are lots of struggling middle class people there, but Norway became a wealthy country because of its oil, because of the discovery of oil in the 1960s, 1970s. We were actually a very poor country before that, but after that our fortunes changed and we became a wealthy country, and is now one of the wealthiest countries in the world today. But that's just some basic stuff about Norway. Now I'm going to go into more of the details. So I'm going to begin with the climate. So as some of you can imagine, the climate in Norway is very cold. And the further north in Norway you go, the colder it often gets. But it's not like that means that there is snow all year round. That is not the case. But we can sometimes have very cold, long and dark winters. And that can be a struggle at times. And you know, this is even more extensive in the northern parts of Norway than in the southern parts of Norway. We still have green springs and summers and even autumns sometimes. We have green summers, but we very seldom, it's very rare we get very warm summers. We can occasionally have a heat wave period lasting for about a week or two, but it's very rare that we have any true heat wave summers. Usually that will not happen, and usually during Norwegian summer, even the evenings will be chilly. Because of the cold and the snow, Norway is a country built to sort of be able to tackle and handle enormous amounts, that's how it says in English, enormous amounts of snow and frosty weather. We were born and raised to handle winter, snow, icy roads, you know. So it takes a lot for our schools and workplaces to shut down. A little snow and ice isn't enough to do that. There has to be a lot of snow and ice. if I close schools and work in Norway due to snow and ice, then it's because there's a lot of it. I don't do that just because of a little snow and ice, because here in Norway we're very used to handle snow and ice, and our houses and infrastructure is isolated and adapted to handle the cold. Because in terms of the cold, a Norwegian winter can be very harsh. So Norway is a country who is very prepared for harsh and tough winters. There are other countries and places in the world where this also is the case, but Norway is one of those places. So we are very sturdy people when it comes to cold and snow. But we are not that used to heat waves and extreme warmth. That is more rare. But when it comes to cold and snow, we're very sturdy, and most Norwegians, including me, have experienced at least one time in their life having to sort of brave icy roads, and probably even sometimes either walk carefully up the ice or almost climb up the ice. One day a few years ago, I was attending a sort of school adult type of course, and it had become very icy, and I had to almost climb my way back home, because my home sort of lies upwards from the school, so I had to move upwards through the roads, and it was icy, so I had to be careful, and I felt I honestly almost had to climb. So yeah. So it's, we're very used to icy road and snowy weather in Norway. But enough about the weather. Because of the cold climate, possibly, we are known for certain social norms which can seem a little odd to strangers. And that is what Norwegians often have a tendency. We're very nice people when you get to know us, most of us. But we can be a little colder to strangers than what you may be used to in more warmer countries. It's not that usual for people to say hello to a stranger on the street. We are still kind and friendly with our neighbors and stuff like that, but and if we talk to a stranger, we will not talk about deep or personal things, just superficial things. It often can take time to win the trust of a Norwegian. And if you take a bus in Norway, you will often notice that the bus is very quiet people, and that people often almost even try to avoid sitting next to a stranger. And that can seem a little cold for a lot of foreigners, but it's how Norwegian culture is. Many Norwegians aren't that comfortable around all strangers. Unfortunately, that can almost, to some foreigners, make our country seem a little rude. But we Norwegians are very nice people if you just get to know us. And if you start to get a Norwegian friend or attend a party, then we're nice people. But you have to sort of get, I'm going to say it like this, you have to sort of often get beneath the ice, beneath that shield which a lot of Norwegians have emotionally. It may be the cold climate which has shaped us in this way. But it is important to know that most Norwegians are very nice, And if you talk to them, most people will be friendly and give you directions if you need them, and stuff like that. Of course, just like in any country, there are rude Norwegians too, but that's not most people. And of course, there are some very social Norwegians too. What I say isn't true for absolutely all Norwegians. There of course exists some super social Norwegians too. We have different personalities here too, after all. So yeah. And if you get a Norwegian friend or attend a Norwegian party or celebration, then you will see more of the inner feelings in the Norwegians come forward and see more of the warmth and joy and love, And I think that if you stay at a hotel, most places, Norwegians will be nice. And of course the people in northern Norway are often known for being a little more social and nicer than the people in other parts of Norway. So if you're traveling to Norway, it's easy to get the wrong impression, but trust me, Norwegians are very nice, most of us anyhow. If you just dare to talk with them and just be patient, and my advice when talking to Norwegian, don't start with asking super personal questions. Ask firstly about their days, general stuff, and then go into more personal stuff once you get to know them, because then they feel more comfortable and trust you more. But of course there are some Norwegians who are more social and who will much more easily share their feelings. So different personalities here too, like in any country. Now I'm going to go more into the facts about Norway. I'm going to go into Norwegian fairy tales. In Norway we have a long tradition with fairy tales, and we have primarily Asbjørnsen Moe. We call them for eventyr in Norway, which translates to fairy tales. And Asbjørnsen Moe were two sort of people, men from the 19th century, who went around in Norway collecting traditional Norwegian folklore and stories. And a common theme of the stories is of course the figures known as trolls. So in Norwegian souvenirs shops you will often see various sculptures of trolls, some with Norwegian flags, some without, but trolls are a very big part of Norwegian folklore. And in the Norwegian fairy tales there were often mystical, foggy forests, and there were trolls. So trolls is essentially the Norwegian fairy tale creatures. There are so many fairy tales in Norway featuring trolls. And that's why it's become sort of the creature associated with Norway. The fairy tale creature associated with Norway as a country. Yeah, we also have a monarchy, a king. Many countries have a president serving as its ceremonial head of state. We have a monarchy, a king and queen, but the reigning monarch is the king. He is the ceremonial head of state. Our current king is King Harald. He has been king of Norway since 1991, when his father passed. And he has a son, who is Crown Prince Håkon, and a granddaughter, who is Princess Ingrid Alexandra. Håkon will become king when Harald passes, and Ingrid Alexandra will become queen when Håkon one day passes, provided that the monarchy, of course, still exists by that time. Well, Ingrid Alexandra will actually be the first queen of the modern Norway. It's possible, I'm not sure, but it's possible Norway has had queens in the past. I believe it has through, we were actually, centuries ago, we were under Denmark, and there was a Danish queen many centuries ago, and she was queen of Norway too. But in modern age, since we got independence, we have not had a queen. So Ingrid Alexandra will be the first queen of Norway in many centuries, if she becomes queen one day. And provided that the monarchy still exists by the time she ascends to the throne, she will most likely become queen one day. But it will of course most likely also be decades into the future yet. Because first Håkon, her father, will become king, when her grandfather, or current king, King Harald, one day passes away. And it's difficult to say when that is, but he is in his 80s now, so there's probably not, there may still be some years left with him as king, but it's probably not super many decades or years left with him as king. His father was King Olav. He was king from the late 1950s to 1991, and before that you had King Håkon, who was Olav's father. He was king from 1905 to the late 1950s, and he was the first king of the independent Norway, because in 1905 the union with Sweden dissolved, and then Norway got its own king for the first time in centuries. So that was a big moment for Norway. So the monarchy is essentially the ceremonial head, or the king is the ceremonial head of state He is not the state leader. He doesn't have any state leader powers, but he's the ceremonial figurehead, the symbolic figurehead. The next part I'm going to go into is a constitution. Our constitution was written in 1814. And because of that, 1814, which in Norway is called the Year of Miracles, is sort of the founding date of Norway as a nation, not as a country. Our country was more or less founded or regarded as we were sort of united as a country around the 700s during the age of the Vikings. But, 800s, apologies, 800s. Around the 800s, but as a nation, the fundaments were in 1840 when we got our own constitution. And this was due to the Napoleonic Wars. You see, back in the day, Norway was in a forced union with Denmark. And because Denmark was on France and Napoleon's side, Norway also was. But seeing as Napoleon lost the conflict, well, Denmark had to give up Norway to Sweden because Sweden had chosen the winning side, so Sweden got Norway. But Norway, now free from Denmark, seized on the opportunity and declared its own constitution. Although Sweden did not accept, and we ended up in a union with Sweden, which although a freer union than the one with Denmark, still restricted somewhat. We fought further for independence, and in 1905 Norway got independence. So, but 1814 were the fundaments for our constitution. And that was the 17th of May 1814, and because of that, 17th of May is our Constitution Day. And that's when we in Norway celebrate National Day. And we do that often not through military parades, but through children parades. Children from schools across the countries walk in parades, waving flags, singing songs with their parents, looking on and sharing. And adults in general, just watching the children parading. With teachers and stuff like that leading the parades. It's a special concept of Norway. And when I was a child, I also several years participated in such parades, waving the flags and, and being in those parades and singing. And I realize now that's a very unique experience to have, an experience I believe you can only have as a Norwegian. I really appreciate what I got that experience as a child. Anyway, so that's a Constitution Day. But we also, of course, celebrate by other means, by eating often things like hot dogs or cakes or ice cream. Ice cream is a big part of cinema, or just pizza. Sometimes people go out in the evening and eat pizza on 17th May. It varies. There are different traditions, So yeah. That was 17th of May. What more can I say? Politics. I want to go into our country's political system. Here in Norway we have a prime minister and a government which is elected to a 4-year term. It is not possible to call new elections in Norway. Elections are fixed, which means that there are 4-year terms. A government can collapse during its term through various means, like a budget defeat or a government or a support party retreating its support. But if that happens, the opposition moves into power. There is no election. Now, election is only once every 4 years. So there is an election upcoming now this autumn, which is a parliamentary election. The first one's in 2021, apologies. We also had the local elections in 2023, but this election in 25 is going to determine our government and prime minister. Currently, we are ruled by the center-left and Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre. He's the leader of the Labour Party, and he and the left coalition won the 21 election. But if current polls are anything to go by, they will probably not win. the 25 election because they are not popular right now. It's not looking good, and it looks like the Conservatives will sweep back into power. And Conservatives were in power from 2013 to 2021, led by the leader of the Conservative Established Right Party, Erna Solberg. And it looks like the Conservatives now will return in autumn 25. Erna Solberg wants to return as Prime Minister, but there's a catch. Recently, the far-right party, the Progress Party, which was in a coalition with the Right Party from 2013 to 2020, well, they're now rising in polls, and the leader, Sylvi Listhaug, who is kind of a populist, kind of controversial far-right figure, has gained in polls, and she's riding the far-right surge occurring in the world right now, gaining on policies like immigration, rising crime, and economy, because we are a struggling middle class in Norway too. And if the far-right party, Progress Party, becomes the biggest, then she may become Prime Minister. But it depends on multiple factors. They have to become the biggest, so the current poll levels, they are currently the biggest in polls, I believe. But it has to keep, we have to keep being the biggest until autumn. And we have to keep being the biggest party. And also, she and the Progress Party will probably have to hope that the Progress Party and the Conservative Party will not depend on the support of the Christian Democrats and the center-right left party, because those two parties will probably oppose Listhaug as Prime Minister, so that could complicate matters. So for her to become Prime Minister, most likely the Conservative Party and the Progress Party, those two parties, will have to have a majority on their own without needing the support of those two other parties. And the Progress Party will have to become the biggest. If the established Conservative Party become the biggest, then Erna will be Prime Minister, and she will return as Prime Minister. But if the Progress Party becomes the biggest and Listhaug becomes Prime Minister, then it is likely that Erna instead will become the new Financial Minister, the Minister of Finance instead. We'll see where this goes. So there is essentially at least 3 Prime Minister candidates this year. Erna Solberg of the established Conservative Right Party, Sylvi Listhaug of the far-right Progress Party, and of course you have the incumbent Prime Minister and party leader of the Labour Party, Jonas Gahr Støre, but it does not seem likely right now that he will win election. It doesn't seem likely. And then you have, we'll also see if he's still party leader and Prime Minister going into autumn, because there has been some uncertainty around that too. Some people have wondered if Tonje Brenna, the deputy of the Labour Party, will move into the position before the election. But regardless, if it goes as the polls look now and the Labour Party and Støre loses the election, then the Labour Party will most likely either way have a new leader next year, who will then probably be the left's Prime Minister candidate in the next election. So we'll see where this all goes and how it works. But regardless, it looks very likely that the coming government will be made up of the Conservative Party and the Progress Party. It's not absolutely certain yet, of course, but the polls indicate that. So, and I'm just going to add a fun fact. Jens Stoltenberg, who recently was the General Secretary of NATO, was actually the previous leader of the Labour Party, and he was Prime Minister from 2005 to 2013. So, yeah, so the General Secretary of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, the previous General Secretary of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, was actually our Prime Minister before he became General Secretary. Anyway, so Now, the coming autumn, the election will kick off. And when the way we will know the results is election evening around either 8 or 9 o'clock in Norwegian time evening. On the television, on the Norwegian news channels, they will do a sort of a projection of how the parties, what kind of representatives, how many representatives the various parties have gained. And there will probably be a picture of the prime minister candidates, and we will see who has gotten the majority to become prime minister. The new prime minister, the next prime minister of Norway. And that projection is usually very accurate. Usually it is very accurate. The results often closely match the projections. And when the media, once the results are in and we know who is on course to become prime minister, the media will probably follow the sort of elected prime minister or the likely prime minister as that person, that party leader, walks to parliament to sort of give a press conference. That is what happened with Solberg when she won re-election in 17. It's what happened with Støre when he won election in 21. And it's what will happen with whoever wins election now in 25. You know, it's kind of the walk of fame to the parliament. Sort of. So, and then of course the king will invite whoever is most likely to form government to form a government. And then there will be a friendly transition process where between the incumbent government and the next government, especially if there is a change in government, Norwegian politics are usually very friendly that way, and I want to add that the strange thing about Norway is that despite all our different political views, we are very friendly to each other, even when we have different political views. Even the politicians of the various political factions are friendly to each other. They talk and are nice to each other outside of debates, and they can even sometimes laugh a little at debates. The Norwegian political climate is very friendly, which is very strange when you see certain other countries, but it's just how things are in Norway. For some reason, we Norwegians doesn't take politics very personally. I mean, we care about politics, we can be passionate, but for some reason we just put politics aside when we talk to each other. And that's probably why our party leaders, even when we're at completely different political views, are actually friendly to each other outside of debates, So it's a strange political climate in Norway that way. But I think that's sort of what it's like to be a Norwegian. I'm not saying this is the case for all Norwegians, of course, but a lot of Norwegians will be very friendly to others, regardless of what they believe, think, or believe in. So, well, what have we talked about? We have talked about the cold climate of Norway, the social norms, the monarchy, the constitution, the trolls, the politics. There's one more thing I want to add. In Norway, perhaps because of the cold climate and because of the purification processes, we have very clean water. Even our spring water, most places, is usually very clean. So most places in Norway, you don't have to worry about drinking the spring water. There is not a lot of germs in the Norwegian water. But it depends, of course, where you are in Norway, I suspect, but we are a country very known for having clean water. Okay, hope you enjoy the facts and me just talking about my home country. I know I talked a lot about my home country now, maybe too much, but I just wanted to give you guys just a few facts about my home country. Hope you enjoyed it. Maybe I'll talk more about Norway later on. Wish you guys the best, a great weekend, all the best. Thank you.